breaking tonight, Ball State canceling in-person classes for the rest of the semester as coronavirus cases continue to increase here in Indiana.
Now on NewsLink Indiana, a year of COVID.
President Jeffrey Mearns made the announcement in a campus-wide email.
A completely different world, hand washing, mask wearing, and social distancing taking center stage.
More news regarding the pandemic continuing to develop by the minute.
The impact felt around the world. Here in Muncie, events canceled.
Everything is still on for the 35th annual parade.
The Muncie St. Patrick's Day Parade is canceled for tomorrow, March 14th, because of COVID-19 concerns.
The NCAA announced this afternoon via Twitter that the annual March Madness basketball tournament has been canceled.
It's kind of crazy to think that, what's everybody going to do now?
I mean, I think all of us realized it was inevitable.
Businesses have struggled, hospitals pushed to the max. But now, breakthroughs in medicine, 3 vaccines approved and in the arms of Americans across the country in a fight that keeps raging.
Tonight, a trip down memory lane, where we've been and where we're going. A look at the coronavirus pandemic 1 year later.
From Ball State Unified Media, this is a NewsLink Indiana special, Coronavirus Pandemic 1 year later.
Wow, it's hard to believe. Exactly 1 year ago today, Annie, we were sitting right behind this desk talking about the coronavirus, a disease that was starting to shake our world to its core. And tonight, we're looking back at where we've been and where we're going. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Tyler Drummond.
And I'm Annie Keister. Thanks for being with us. March 11th, 2020 is a day that is frozen in our history and in our memory. Ball State announced all classes were going remote. The NBA suspended its season, and the World Health Organization said COVID-19 is a pandemic. The past year has had many changes at the local, state, and federal levels. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were scared, unsure of what this would look like and how long it would last. People hoped it would be gone by summer. Most weren't even wearing a mask yet. We've gained a lot of perspective over the last year, so let's go ahead and watch the year of events in COVID-19 unfold.
March 5th, 2020. Ball State suspends all work-related travel to China, South Korea, and Italy and cancels future study abroad programs in preparation for the coronavirus outbreak. Next, the university launches a website with information about the virus, prevention, symptoms, treatment, and a link to the CDC's website. Indiana has its first confirmed case of COVID-19. Nationwide, there have been more than 200 confirmed cases and a dozen deaths. March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declares COVID-19 a pandemic.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Drummond.
And I'm Annie Keister. Thanks for joining us. Tonight we begin with breaking news just into our newsroom. Ball State University cancels all in-person classes for the rest of the semester.
Ball State is the first university in the state of Indiana to move to remote classes.
I definitely think it's a little bit over the top.
Mid-March, President Trump declares the coronavirus pandemic a national emergency. Muncie events begin moving online or canceling. Governor Holcomb orders all restaurants and bars to close on the day of Indiana's first COVID-19 death.
We were only at the beginning of what would be a long race.
Just 1 day later, Indiana reports its second death. March 16th, Ball State announces it will close residence halls in 13 days. Days later, Ball State closes all workout facilities. March 23rd, May commencement is canceled in hopes of a later alternative. The bookstore eventually cancels cap and gown orders April 9th. COVID-19 continues into the summer as events are postponed or canceled. Governor Holcomb announces a plan to start to reopen Indiana May 1st.
Today I can report that thanks to the discipline and actions of 6.7 million Hoosiers, we are ready to move ahead in a measured way.
Hair salons and restaurants begin opening back up with restrictions. Some counties are on a separate track. Some stages are delayed throughout summer 2020. Ball State summer classes go remote. Ball State awards $7.6 million in funding to students through the CARES Act. Students meeting the requirements receive between $500 and $1,000 in federal funds. Late June, Ball State releases plans for returning fall semester. According to the plan, on-campus in-person classes begin August 24th and move to remote learning after Thanksgiving break. Students will have 13 full weeks on campus working through fall break and Labor Day.
Our paramount responsibility is to protect the health and safety of every member of our university community.
Following CDC recommendations, the university requires faculty, staff, and students on campus to wear face masks while inside buildings, including the classrooms. Contact tracing, screenings, testing, and of course, university officials encourage social distancing and frequent hand washing.
So as we steel ourselves for the uncertainties that lie ahead, let us soften our hearts. Let us be there for each other as colleagues and as friends.
And that, of course, brings us to Ball State's return in the fall.
Yeah, of course, after a really long break, students came back to campus in August. Some classes in person, others online. Mask wearing, social distancing, and contact tracing at the center of efforts to keep students on campus. NewsLink Indiana's Logan Salzbrunner tells us how this school year has looked since BSU's return and the university's response.
Students returned for both in-person and online classes for the 2020 fall semester, but were sent home early again for winter break. After a long break, students wondered if they would return to campus for the 2021 spring semester. Their answer, a release from President Jeffrey Merns inviting students back to campus once they are tested for COVID-19. The new change, 3 study and mental health days instead of spring break.
We know it is not a perfect substitute for spring break. We know there's a difference between being able to get away for an entire week, but we thought it would provide just a little bit of relief. As I say, we know it is imperfect, but we're all working together to adjust to the continuing unprecedented challenge that we're facing.
The next question for students, when and how senior commencement would take place. Merns emailing students saying the ceremony will take place in person and at Schumann Stadium. While some questions have been answered, there is still some uncertainty of what changes Ball State may have to make in the future. In Muncie, Logan Salzbrunner, NewsLink Indiana.
As students returned, cases began popping up here on campus. 2 weeks into the fall semester, University President Jeff Merns threatened to suspend in-person classes, but numbers decreased and students stayed right here on campus. Last semester, through Ball State's partnership with IU Health, there were 419 reported cases in students and 24 in employees. As for self-reported cases, 1,032 student cases and 98 employee cases were confirmed on the dashboard. This makes for a total of 1,573 cases in the fall. Ball State is tracking COVID-19 cases on a separate dashboard for this semester. We have a link to it on ballstatedaily.com.
We're looking particularly at this virus showing up in people around that within that 14 days. So for these universities to say, hey, we have a lot of students traveling, in and out of multiple probably airports and countries, to kind of do that social distancing for 14 days afterwards, definitely was a great mitigation strategy.
Well, a year ago, not only did Ball State make the decision to go remote, but IU Health Ball Memorial was gearing up for battle. At the time, Delaware County had 0 reported cases of COVID-19. Since then, the hospital has dealt with thousands of coronavirus cases, a fight that has delivered punch after punch. In the thick of it, some worried it could deliver a knockout blow to the hospital, but now with loads of information and vaccines giving a shot in the arm to people across the country, healthcare workers are now in a much different place. Tonight, we hear from officials at IU Health Ball Memorial who are hopeful for a comeback.
If you are sick, stay home. Stay out of big crowds. Please don't go to events until you're feeling better.
Simple advice given 1 year ago. Advice that soon became our new normal. A time when the virus hadn't yet shown its teeth, but had already struck fear, even in the heart of what would quickly become Muncie's COVID Nerve Center. Take me through what you remember from those initial days.
There was a shortage and a real concern around PPE that transitioned into, do we have enough ventilators and other types of equipment like that?
Brian Reed works with IU Health. He's been helping with this fight from the start. Fast forward to March 2021, Reed says the power of knowledge and adaptability has gotten healthcare workers through most of this pandemic.
We know a little more, and even within our own operations, we've learned how to to be more flexible and innovative about how to see patients.
But for Reed and his team, the real battle was perhaps one with symptoms that couldn't always be seen. Symptoms the CDC doesn't have on its website.
The emotional toll for our team, and just unfortunately with seeing as many deaths as we have, has really been the challenge.
And as people reflect on a tough year that's impacted every aspect of life, Reed hopes people can look forward to a brighter future.
We're so blessed right now that, there's 3 vaccines that have been approved and are available. And I think the more we can get that and keep pushing that number up, the quicker we're going to be able to do the things that we refer to as getting back to normal.
And a huge thank you there to the folks at IU Health Ball Memorial. Now, Reed says even though he's excited for what's to come, he says everyone needs to continue to wear a mask and stay socially distanced. Now, you can get a vaccine at IU Health Ball Memorial. For more information on that, you can visit their website. We've got a link online at ballstatedaily.com. And since the beginning of the pandemic, Ball State has completed a full semester of in-person learning. For many students, Annie, it was their first taste of college.
And some of them don't even know what a true normal college life looks like. NewsLink Indiana's Emily Harless talked with some of our freshmen here in NewsLink to get their perspective on a not-so-typical start to college.
Yeah, Tyler and Annie, we are joined by 5 of our NewsLink Indiana freshmen. We have Catherine Segal, Zachary Jones, Grace Minkowski, Libby Klemeyer, and Tara Konichny here with us today. So, guys, it's been a very unusual year for you, very unusual start to your year. Kind of, what were you expecting to have when you came to college that you don't necessarily have?
I think that I was expecting to have more opportunities because a lot of people say that once you go to college you have a lot of freedom and get to do a lot of activities, but since COVID restrictions we haven't really been able to do a lot of activities outside of going to class.
Personally, I know there's club sports, there's intramural sports, and there's regular sports here. I really wanted to play some club and intramural sports here, but I know they took away most intramurals. I think all club right now this semester they're allowing practices for some, and then they're doing intramural like kickball and stuff like that. They can socially distance, but that's what I expected is more intramurals and stuff like that.
I expected more of a social life. It's very hard to meet people, especially like in classes. We sit far apart. We don't know really what people look like because of the masks. And so I've kind of found that it's really hard to meet new people and like make new friends.
Speaking of that social life, you guys are involved in the club, and I think, NewsLink is one that has fortunately been able to operate, mainly in person, but not a lot of clubs have been like that. Catherine, I know that you're involved in sorority life here at BSU, so kind of tell me about the experience within that, how it's been different.
Sorority life is different because a lot of sororities are pretty big, and so the normal events that you would be able to do to raise money for your philanthropy has to be changed. You have to find different ways to donate, and some of those bonding events that you could have had to meet more of your sisters haven't been able to happen or have had to be reduced in size of people allowed. So it's been a little more difficult to meet people in my sorority.
Now, Grace, I want to talk to you. I know that you were very, very excited to get into the newsroom world. So what's kind of been different here within NewsLink that you really weren't expecting?
I really wasn't expecting kind of to be split up in our specific days. I thought we were going to work together a lot more, but I know because of COVID, we really just had to stick to the people that we work with on the specific days that we are in the newsroom. But we have still come together, I believe, as an organization to produce something that we are proud of every night. So.
Libby, I want to hear about your experience here within NewsLink. What were you hoping for? What are you hoping for maybe can change as well in the future?
I love NewsLink. It really has made me make all new friends. First semester was really hard because I didn't have a lot of in-person classes. So I just stay in my dorm room all day, and getting out and going to NewsLink really helped me get those connections. I don't really know what to expect for next semester. I hope it's a little bit different. But I do like getting people and meeting all the new people and seeing them in the newsroom is really exciting. And yeah.
Zach, earlier on, you also mentioned trying to get involved through other things to meet friends since you can't really get out and do things within the dorms or within other clubs. You mentioned intramural sports. Have you been able to try to get involved with any of those, and how are those different as well?
Personally, I want to play club volleyball, and I've wanted to the past 2 semesters here, and they haven't had it. But me and a buddy go to the rec center, and there's 5 basketball courts there. They'll allow 3 people per court to shoot around. You're not allowed to play like one-on-one. You're not allowed to get physical. You're only allowed to shoot. And I know there's like a jump roping club in there, and then everything's pretty much spread out in there. But I've gotten to meet some people through the rec center and just going over there and shooting around, but not many. And I know there's usually some pickup games there that would happen, but I haven't gotten to experience that yet because we had to stay separated.
Ball State has announced that they want to try to do some more in-person activities. So, Catherine, what are you necessarily hoping can change for the fall?
Well, I'm hoping the beginning of fall will be a little different. I know last fall semester, welcome week was definitely not what it usually is, and there weren't a lot of things on campus going around. So I'm hoping that next semester there may be able to be a little bit more of that. And also, just like I mentioned earlier, more activities and more in-person events for people, but obviously safely.
And Libby, Tara, what about you guys? What are you guys hoping for?
Like Catherine said, just kind of like getting out more, meeting new people. I know everything's been on Zoom, and it's been really difficult to like know them and kind of like be like, hey, like want to be friends, because like I don't know, just like the whole like commenting like, hey, like what's your Snapchat? I feel like that's kind of weird. So in person be better, just to talk to them and just get to know more people.
I'm really looking forward and hoping that sports will be back, like that we could go to games more easily, because I know like this football season, like I was really looking forward to like tailgating and stuff like that comes along with like college sports game days and stuff like that. And I know we weren't able to do that. So next semester, I hope that we're able to go to games on the normal like time, because I know it was like pushed back this semester a little bit, that we could tailgate and have some fun with some people, even though it may be still a little smaller group of people. But I just hope that that's back to normal.
Grace, what about you?
I'm definitely hoping next semester we're able to make more connections with the people in our classes as well as our professors. I feel like that's something that we've obviously lacked this semester just because of COVID guidelines. But I think that's something that I'm definitely looking forward to, is getting to know a little bit more about the people that I'm studying with and the departments that I'm in.
All right, and Zach, you as well?
I mean, pretty much everyone kind of said it all. Tailgating, going to games. I think only 2 football games in the regular season we were allowed to go to, and you had to sign up for like a ticket list or something. And then definitely more of like a community here. Obviously, right now it's been pretty cold outside. Today is a really nice day, but I feel like a lot of it has come with the cold weather that we're stuck inside, and there's not much to do anyway on campus since of all like the canceled events and they're not planning them. But as the better weather comes outside, I'm sure more people will get out and see more people on campus.
All right, well, Catherine, Grace, Libby, Tara, Zach, thanks all 5 of you for joining us here today. And Tyler and Annie, I think nothing signifies just how different things are than the fact that we had to, of course, do this roundtable on Zoom rather than in person. So, once again, thanks to the 5 of them for joining me. And Tyler and Annie, back to you.
Yeah, Emily, that is absolutely right. And Tyler, as someone who did get to experience nearly 2 years of college life pre-COVID, some of those answers are just heartbreaking.
Yeah, heartbreaking. You took that word away from me, but just hearing what they had to say, it's unfortunate, because I remember our freshman and sophomore years, we would all hang out after a show, we would all come together and just have fun, and we haven't been able to do that this year. So
you absolutely have to feel for them.
Yeah, hopefully things can kind of get back to normal and they can all hang out together. So of course, a huge thank you to our NewsLink Indiana freshmen. Hey, we still have a lot more ahead here tonight. How do you navigate a global pandemic while leading an entire nation? A look at former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden's response to the pandemic.
And annual Muncie staple events and Muncie businesses, how they chose to adapt in moments.
Riding the bus is an easy thing to do. Last year, we carried 60,000 riders from the Ball State area. 50,000 of those were students. Anywhere you want to go, Mitts will take you there.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that! That's disgusting! Oh, poop already! You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Welcome back here on this Thursday night to Coronavirus Pandemic 1 year later.
Tonight, we're looking back at how COVID-19 has changed our lives. A year ago, then President Donald Trump announced travel bans from European countries.
It marked the beginning of what would snowball into a series of national orders. The CDC issued social distancing guidelines, meaning people had to stay 6 feet apart. This led to people working remotely. Trump eventually gave more control over to the states. When it comes to fighting the pandemic, the former president often contradicting advice from scientists. During Trump's term, both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were approved.
However, it was an election year. Voters went to the polls in record numbers, some voting from home. In November, Joe Biden was declared the winner. Biden hit the ground running, implementing a mask mandate at all national properties. Since he's been in office, Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine has started to be administered.
Throughout this pandemic, it's been really important for us to be able to bring you the best coverage we can of what's happening. And for the final 2 months of last spring semester, we were all forced to work from home to bring you the news. We'll talk a little more about that a bit later in the show during our roundtable discussion. But our weather department, they also had to make some changes. Our chief weather forecaster, Nathan Gidley, pulls back the curtain. Nathan?
Hello, everyone. This is Chief Weather Forecaster Nathan Gidley coming to you from my home. And at this time 1 year ago, COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, and we had to move all of our operations remotely to work here from home. So we on the weather team used a software called TeamViewer that allowed us to access our graphics remotely from the Unified Media Lab. So let's take you through just how TeamViewer works. You hit this button on the desktop down here, says TeamViewer, and this is how we accessed our graphics remotely from the Unified Media Lab. So you just hit connect, connecting us right to the computer in the lab. As we see, it pops up here, this little dialog box. You hit OK. Here's our graphics. Hit the WSI Max system. You would click on your individual workspace. So I'm going to click on my workspace, bringing up our graphics. So when the system pops up, we were able to record the graphics here in WSI, and then we were able to talk over them. So I use a combination of iMovie and the record feature in WSI. So let's take you through how that would work. Here's some graphics that are going to pop up. I would just hit the record button and this little window would pop up. Once the window pops up, you just press the button to start recording. So I would sort of pretend to talk over these graphics while the graphics ran, and then I would put the video in iMovie and then just record myself over the graphics and then send these off to the NewsLink production team. So it's a real intuitive way for us to still have weather content on shows for NewsLink. And it certainly was a real interesting way to conduct weather operations, but it was great to still have that capability using TeamViewer. Let's take you through a short example of what one of our remote videos looked like.
After the storms rolled through last night, we see temperatures drop into the upper 40s for the high today, reaching a high of 49 today is what we're expecting for this afternoon. Partly cloudy skies will be continuing through this afternoon and into this evening.
And that was our weather forecaster, Jordan Wolf, from last spring. So that's how the weather team was impacted by the COVID-19 lockdown.
And that certainly feels like a blast from the past now, Nathan. Thank you so much. Now, traditions, another thing the pandemic took away from communities. Communities come together by events, parties, celebrations. Celebrations canceled, one after the next. NewsLink Indiana's Brittany Dobbins sat down with downtown Muncie's event director, Cheryl Crowder, to see how her job has adapted over the year.
Yeah, Annie, uncertainty, one of the many obstacles we all faced together throughout the past year, and instead of turning away from the unknown, Crowder embraced it.
Her parades have been getting canceled in Boston and in Chicago.
But the parade here in Muncie still on as of now for this Saturday.
Just 1 year ago, preparations were continuing for celebrations.
I think we were more worried about weather at this point. Not that we're not worried about that, but it looks like it may do a little bit of raining, so that may bring our numbers down as much as anything.
Numbers. People. Not even a thing now as we look back with the pandemic creeping up on us in the rearview mirror.
An update to a story NewsLink Indiana brought you earlier in the week. The Muncie St. Patrick's Day Parade is canceled for tomorrow, March 14th, because of COVID-19 concerns.
Event after event, gathering after gathering. Canceled. Unbreakable, memorable, irresistible, not so typical original Muncie. How downtown is marketed, but something so unoriginal. The livelihood. Taken away by the pandemic.
I mean, we definitely have had to pivot a lot. And we had a full event schedule last year that we were unable to complete as it was.
Adapting to the obstacles COVID-19 brought became the new norm.
It also gave us an opportunity to be creative in how we supported our businesses.
2 campaigns were created
that allowed us to give the community the opportunity to support the small businesses that are down here when they were really hurting.
A commonality the pandemic brought among us all. But from one of the campaigns came $14,000, which was split among all the businesses that were eligible.
It gave us an opportunity to keep the businesses at top of mind for the community.
Supporting businesses, redefining typical. Another campaign downtown development created to show how businesses were adapting to restrictions downtown.
These businesses are amazingly resilient. They chose downtown to begin with because they're not typical, and they're redefining the typical, and they're resilient, and they will be here for whatever it is you need.
And as the year went on and restrictions started to ease, some of Muncie's iconic events were able to be held, even though they had to be done a different way than what was expected.
Like, his name was Naughty. And we had 80 of them out in windows downtown and created elf hunt.
But maintaining a positive attitude, Crowder says,
has been hard. I feel everybody's had some degree of that hopelessness that comes.
Hopelessness can strike, but when it does,
don't worry about a thing. Maintaining a positive attitude that even if we don't get to do it this way, we'll still do something, and that will be okay.
Now, traditions here in Muncie are a little different now, and as for St. Patrick's Day celebrations this year, it hasn't changed from last. There is not a parade happening, but instead a scavenger hunt throughout downtown Muncie. Muncie's Pot of Gold Puzzler is happening right now until St. Patrick's Day, which is next week on March 17th. To complete this puzzle, you will have to visit downtown businesses and make a purchase in exchange for a puzzle piece. Now, Annie and Tyler, once you get all the pieces to your card, you can either mail it off or drop it off at Downtown Development's location on Charles Street, or you can email them to SherylCrowder@gmail.com.
Now, Britt, once people are done with their cards and send it in, what's next?
5 lucky people that are randomly selected will get a pot of gold, the gold being $101 coins.
Yeah, it's really cool that they're doing that. By the way, Britt, I remember 1 year ago when you talked to Cheryl Crowder, such a different time. What do you remember about that day?
Oh man, I mean, we were from one story to the next. That day we had St. Patrick's Day to IU Health, and it's just been bouncing back and forth that whole day, and then school got closed down, so it was roller coaster.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot for us to take in. We'll hear more from you later in our roundtable. Brittany, thank you so much. And as we know, businesses, they've struggled all throughout the pandemic. This past year has been crazy for those businesses. And we've taken you through several local shops across Delaware County, highlighting the tough job of simply keeping the doors open.
NewsLink Indiana's Anna Chalker is with us live tonight in the newsroom. Anna, how has their work shown throughout the pandemic?
Yes, Tyler and Annie, businesses have been perhaps hit the hardest from the pandemic. Even though challenges have come up, businesses in Muncie have found the best ways to overcome them. When COVID-19 was first declared a pandemic, every business knew that changes would happen fast.
We've been kind of being guided by the health department here.
So it's really kind of up to them. That's kind of we've let them sort of guide us how we want to go.
Here in Muncie, small businesses like Toys Forever, Models and Hobbies had to shut down for 2 weeks minimum to figure out what the state would let them do.
Sort of shut down for about a week, maybe 2 weeks-ish, till we sort of got a good feel on what's going on.
Social distancing and capacity sizes were changing frequently, causing many businesses to update their policies.
Still have a great event with a great turnout and still be able to wear your mask, still be able to socially distance.
With the help of Downtown Muncie and other large business supporters, events could be held to the guidelines and still bring people that same hometown feel.
Chalk It Up to Kindness came about in part because I think we could all use a little more kindness right now.
And without the help of the customers supporting the businesses, the outcome would not be the same.
Thank you for standing with us. They would line out in the parking lot after they've placed their order. We did the best that we was possibly able to do.
If any small businesses need help with guidance on how to go through the pandemic, they can go to the U.S. Small Business Administration's website at sba.gov. Live in the newsroom, Anna Chalker, NewsLink, Indiana. Tyler and Annie.
Thank you so much. Of course, it's good to see businesses are able to kind of get back on their feet, especially after the year that they've had.
And I think a lot of us were on survival mode there at the beginning. I think it's really important we keep in touch with those businesses that keep our community running.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We're going to have much more ahead right here on this special edition of NewsLink Indiana. Blake Dahlia and Joey Moore, they're going to be looking at the sports world in the past year. Stay with us.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
One in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother,
yes.
You, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, your plumber,
breathe right into your foot,
your plumber's masseuse,
yes.
You, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, pre-diabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back to our NewsLink Indiana COVID-19 special, The Pandemic 1 Year Later. I'm Blake Dahlia. Now, one would be hard-pressed to find any industry not impacted by the coronavirus, but sports have arguably been the hardest hit. And the day it all shut down, all started in the NBA with what Rudy Gobert thought was an innocent joke. After the Jazz-Thunder game, Rudy Gobert touching all the mics during a post-game press conference. Beforehand, he tested negative for strep and the flu, and after, positive for COVID-19. This led all the teams that played the Jazz in the last 10 days to self-quarantine. His teammate, Donovan Mitchell, later tested positive, and ultimately the season would go on a long hiatus. Gobert would go on to post on his social media in French and in English saying he was sorry for those he endangered and hoped his story served as a lesson to others. Gobert and his teammates would all go on to make a full recovery.
And immediately after that news broke, NewsLink Indiana had coverage of the fallout of the March Madness tournament. I'm Joey Moore. The day sports shut down is a day I'll never forget. Cancellation after cancellation coming into the newsroom. Let's take a look at the day NCAA March Madness called it quits, and the major leagues that followed shortly after. Good evening and welcome back to NewsLink Indiana. I'm Joey Moore with sports. We won't be seeing any more action this semester as the Mid-American Conference has canceled all athletics for the remainder of the 2019-20 season. The MAC joins the Big Ten, Ivy League, Pac-12, and Big 12 in canceling their athletics for the remainder of the season. MAC teams will not be permitted to hold organized practice until further notice. The NCAA announced this afternoon via Twitter that the annual March Madness basketball tournament has been canceled. The basketball tournament was not the only tournament to be dropped, as the announcement also claimed that all NCAA tournaments and championship events for the winter season have been canceled. The IHSAA still plans to continue. According to Commissioner Bobby Cox, the regional games will be played with only essential personnel, coaches, administrative staff, and immediate family members. Each school will receive 75 tickets in addition to each team's 12 dressed players. As of yesterday, Cox had still planned to hold the tournament in front of fans. Canceling the tournament, which still remains a possibility, Cox claims, could cost the association $500,000. The Mid-American Conference has made the decision to cancel their conference basketball tournaments due to the coronavirus. Along with the MAC, the Big Ten, ACC, SEC, Big 12, and many other conferences have canceled their basketball tournaments. Some conferences made the call just minutes before contests were about to begin, including the Big Ten, who canceled their tournament while players were warming up for the Michigan versus Rutgers game. The Big East canceled their tournament at halftime of the Creighton versus St. John's game. Unfortunately, many major league sports have put an indefinite halt to their seasons due to the coronavirus. The NBA, the NHL, the MLS, and the MLB have all ended their seasons early. NASCAR, the PGA, and IndyCar have chosen to keep operations going, but without spectators. The NFL is still all systems go, however. They have suspended all travel until further notice. And Blake, if you'll remember, we were both at the desk that night, and if you look back at our banter, you can just tell how disappointed we were.
Oh, I mean, disappointment beyond belief, and easily probably one of the most stressful, if not the most stressful night of my career. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
And it's really a shame just seeing March Madness and everything canceled. It's
yeah,
just,
all my
I'm
bracket
speechless.
picks are out the window, but I guess you could say everybody had a perfect bracket this year.
You could. Indeed, what a night. Truly one that won't slip the memory bank anytime soon.
And finally, the virus that we thought would never reach home became yet another humbling reality. This is no exception here in and around our viewing area. Blackford High School Athletic Director Tony Ugan tested positive for COVID back in late August. He would later go on to have 2 stays at the hospital and spent almost 2 weeks in the intensive care unit. Now, unlike some stories, Ugan made a recovery and is now at 80% of his normal lung function. I sat down with him back in late November to hear about his remarkable comeback story.
Just finished. 5th trip. The front door. It was scary because we didn't know what happened.
September 3rd, 2020, the day Tony Ugan was hospitalized with COVID-19 and eventually going into intensive care.
They'd asked me the one thing nobody wants to hear, do you have a will? You know, and I don't want to say that I was near death, but I was in that range where it was a possibility.
And for his daughter living in Oregon, things made that much more difficult.
The scariest part of everything was when you start getting messages about this is what I would want my funeral to be like, and that's when it was like, okay, this is very serious. You just keep playing back the last time you saw that person again. So I just kept thinking, the last time I saw my dad, like, is that going to be the last time that I see my dad?
Ugan spent 3 weeks here at Ball Memorial Hospital in his first of 2 stays. 11 of those days were spent in the ICU. And if you walked a mere 10 feet to go to the bathroom or get a snack, it would leave him completely exhausted.
I came to the conclusion of that I'm satisfied with what I've accomplished in life and came to the reality that, you know, I could die, didn't think I would, and I told my wife, I said, I'm not afraid of dying. I've accomplished what I needed to in my life.
But after weeks of isolation, Ugan doing what every patient wants to do, come back home.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And not stopping at that. The next step, going back to work.
We were very happy for him, but reserved in the sense we wanted to make sure he wasn't going to push himself too hard.
You think about life and whatnot and what you have, and you surely find out who really cares about you.
His family thrilled to have him back.
It's hard to even describe how much my dad means to me and how much he's given me and been there for me.
And next step, one of their favorite pastimes, going on family road trips together. When we return, members of our exec team give us an inside look at covering the pandemic as student journalists. Don't go away.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to the shelterpetproject.org and meet if you are in a shelter near you. Harlow, oh, she's one great listener who loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to the shelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Problems. The ones nobody talks about at cocktail parties. We go looking for them. No matter the obstacles, no matter the odds. We surround a community's most critical problems, and we fight. United Way fights for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community. Will you?
It doesn't take a scientist to cure hunger or a fancy economist to create safe housing. It takes imagination, creativity, sweat equity. And I think of kids going to school hungry. Hunger, homelessness. In this land of plenty, seriously? Come on, we could fix this. Help out, or don't. The choice is yours.
Weeknights, NewsLink Indiana brings you the news before you go to bed.
But Friday mornings, you're waking up with Cardinal weather. We've got the latest news headlines.
Freezing temperatures have set in all the way down in Louisiana.
One man dead after flooding in Venice, Italy.
Up-to-the-minute weather conditions.
Cold temperatures are the story this morning.
And of course, lots of fun.
It is not
What
funny.
on earth is happening there?
I feel sorry for the little guy.
I've got my socks on. Annie with her curly hair, which is actually never curly. Join us Friday mornings at 8 on Facebook Live. Welcome back to Coronavirus Pandemic 1 year later. We want to take a moment now and kind of just debrief and kind of, just have a conversation because what a year it has been.
And I know we already discussed it for a little while back, but I want to start from the very beginning, March 11th. We're joined by NewsLink Indiana's Brittany Dobbins once again, as well as Blake Dollier. Now, Brittany, you were here with us at the desk. What was going through your brain? You were covering a story that was still on, and we touched on how that was quickly canceled. What were you thinking?
I mean, right from the beginning, I was already looking for a story, and St. Patrick's Day was right around the corner, and that's one of the biggest things that downtown Muncie was doing during that time, especially with COVID, and one of the biggest events that was happening. So like I said, we were starting a story going from downtown Muncie, from Cheryl Crowder to IU Health. I mean, it was story to back to story, back to story. So many things happening, so many news headlines that was going around Muncie. I mean, it was just one thing to the next to the next. It was very stressful.
And Britt, you were the first one to cover a COVID cancellation for NewsLink.
Yeah, I mean, didn't know it at the time, but now looking back at it, I mean, what a time it's been. I mean, look how far we've come, and all the uncertainty, like even Cheryl Crowder said, you just gotta embrace it.
Well, and to your point, Britt, I remember that same day, I actually turned a story as well, and one thing that I kind of addressed was, are we taking this pandemic too seriously? At the time, when I started working on the story, it wasn't a pandemic, it was simply just coronavirus, and people were making jokes. There was a Cardi B video going around of her going like, coronavirus, but at the time, we didn't know how big of a deal this would become, and I think it's kind of a testament because things just started moving so quickly. We had the parade that was canceled, but then also, Blake, we had March Madness the next day was canceled. The NBA on March 11th suspended its season. I remember that day, it was just one thing after another, even in the sports world.
I mean, it was rapid fire action in terms of cancellations. It was one of the craziest things I had ever seen, and to be honest with you, it gives me chills to think about because when I put it in perspective, I'm a college bowler, and college bowling had just finished. So to me, it was like, yay, the off season, but little did I know that the off season was actually going to last several months.
Yeah, absolutely. Annie, what do you remember about that day?
March 11th, I remember sitting in here preparing for our show. Roughly about 5 o'clock, we got the email. We were anticipating, I think is the same as every other school, a 2-week-long spring break. We had actually returned from our spring break at that point. And I remember being on Twitter and IU, 2 weeks, like all the surrounding schools. And we knew, someone warned us that there was going to be an email coming later in the afternoon, and 5 o'clock that came. And it was a scramble, I want to say. Do you look at it as a journalist? Do you look at it as a human, as a student? I remember a few of our seniors were in the newsroom at that time, and I remember vividly someone saying, "Is this my last show?"
Yeah.
And cut off early. We were prepared to keep going. And of course we did continue with our remote shows, as Nathan touched on earlier. We made it work. But like you said before, all these events that happen, as they were happening, you didn't realize how serious that was going to be. So many things that we did, that we featured on the show while we were doing them, I had no idea that someday, a year later, we would be putting them in a show to look back at all of them.
Well, and one thing I remember is me and you, when we first heard about that email, we were standing right in front of the desk. Our assistant sports director, Joey Moore, it was his birthday, by the way. Happy birthday to you, Joey. But he was back there.
Birthday present there.
Yeah, what a birthday present for things to kind of just start crashing down, if you will. But I remember we were standing right there, we heard the news, and the next thing I know, we're on air with a special report. We're talking about it. Me and you, we had a Facebook Live beforehand where we literally said, we were like, what the hell is happening? Because there was just so much that was coming out. It was one thing after another. I think shock was the best way to describe it.
And I can't picture, back then we're sitting around looking around like, oh, does this mean such and such is canceled? Well, of course. Of course, now that we look back. But at the time we were contemplating, what does this mean for us? Will we still be able to do this, that?
And how is it though, as you guys as anchors, you know what I mean? Like as anchors, you don't really have time to come together and read through everything, and getting thrown on that show, that's basically what you guys did that day, because with all the fumbling that was happening, how was it?
Well, I think not only as an anchor, but a journalist, you need to know what's happening. And you need to be able to deliver to people. You fully understand what you are telling them, and you have verified it's true. But in such an unknown space for us, that was probably the most nervous I'll ever be. For a newscast, and everything we have was verified, of course, but I wasn't looking at tonight. I was looking at the future, and I've never had to look forward and say, I'm not sure.
Well, and I remember at the time, back then, that's when I was our assistant news director. Our news director at the time, Zoe Dwiggins. Me and her, during commercial breaks, we were having conversations. We're like, hey, what are we going to do? We didn't know what was going to happen. It was uncharted territory, but of course we know that there was that working from home element that became so familiar to people all throughout our business, all throughout society. But I think one thing that we didn't really know what would happen was what exactly would come during the summer. I think the summertime, we were kind of like, hey, are we opening back up? I thought it was all going to be over. What did you guys think?
I think a lot of people anticipated the warmer weather. That was the whole conversation, as temperatures started to rise. The warmer weather will take it away.
To be honest with you guys, I honestly thought it was going to be an overreaction at first. I thought, why are we canceling when no other colleges have even done this? I mean, what are we thinking? And, well, little did I know that today, 1 year later, like you mentioned, Annie, things were going to be absolutely insane. And I mean, we still don't know when things are going to go back to normal. And I mean, I sure hope and I have my fingers crossed that they will, but I mean, we just don't know. And I mean, I really hope it's soon.
I mean, for me, the uncertainty was the biggest factor that everyone has overcome. You know what I mean? And the one thing that is certain is that we are always going to be here, delivering the news, doing whatever you guys need for the community. And I think with that, at the beginning, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to cover this. We didn't know anything. And that was the biggest thing, like you said, the fake news. Fake news was one of the other biggest things that we faced throughout this whole pandemic, was fake news, false information, all this other stuff, but we've come past it. I think we could say together that we've all come past this, and we know how to deliver it, and we know how to execute covering a pandemic from all of this. That's one thing that
one of the hardest things for me especially was like sports during the pandemic, because I mean there were no sports, and like a lot of people said to me, they're like, oh hey, what are you guys gonna cover? And I mean, to be honest with you guys, I didn't know. I'm somebody that's really quick to speak up and say things, but as you guys all very well know, and I mean, this is like the once in a lifetime opportunity that I think I'll ever have to be truly lost for words and just say, what do we do? Because I mean, all it was rolling through these cancellations, and it was like the one time in the busiest sports time of the year, arguably, in March with March Madness and everything, that suddenly it was just dead. Like I said, everybody had a perfect March Madness bracket, but it was funny at the time, but really looking back on it, not so funny anymore.
Well, and to your point, Blake, we saw a lot of changes, because I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, basically nobody was wearing masks. People they were laughing at the prospect of social distancing. They were
And
like,
well
oh,
into it too.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't even just at the beginning. It just lasted so long, and I mean, people were skeptical pretty much the entire time.
Yeah, and I remember for several weeks we were all interning together in Indianapolis, and people didn't wear masks because it wasn't a thing that was thought of, you know, this is what we need to do during the pandemic. And then all of a sudden, these health experts are coming out there saying, hey, you need to wear a mask, you need to spread out. And I think some point during the summer, that's when people started to take it seriously, when the government was like, hey, you need to mask up.
I think August was really that turning point because,
Absolutely.
like, even through 4th of July, like, everybody was gathering. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself.
I am
went
too.
and gathered, and, you know, it's like we didn't even know, and then suddenly here we are. It's like just as we think things are about to be over, things are, you know, maybe arguably worse than they were before.
Yeah, one thing I do want to get into, this is something a little more personal for, I know, the two of you guys, Brittany and Blake. You guys actually both had the virus at one point. Brittany, I'll start with you. What was that like for you?
Well, luckily, I suppose you could say that, I got it during break. I mean, not really break, but around Thanksgiving. And at that point, we had already gone online. So it didn't really matter too much because I wasn't here and we weren't doing newscasts. So that didn't matter to me as much. But what mattered most was health. You know what I mean? That's the biggest factor that everyone wants to take seriously during this time was health. And I have an autoimmune disease, so I was more capable of getting it faster and easier. So it was very scary. You know, it was hard to breathe. It is what they say it is.
Yeah, Blake.
And I mean, see, for me, I kind of had the opposite end of the spectrum. When I got it, I couldn't have told you I had it. I felt the best I had felt, honestly, in years because I had just gotten over my seasonal allergies. I had a sinus infection that had cleared up. And so, like, I was doing great. I was on cloud 9, and I was telling my mom, actually, I said, Mom, I feel so good. And I was, you know, she was really happy. And then, you know, little did we know, a couple minutes later, Nathan would call me on the phone the next morning, and I'd wake up, and he said, hey, my test came back positive. And I said, what? And I was like, well, what do I do? I mean, at this case, me and Nathan, our chief weather forecaster, we live together. So, like, what do I do? I mean, I'm just kind of lost. And so I think then, you know, I did the responsible thing, and I went and got tested. And so I called my parents on the phone, and I said, look, I'm positive too. Couldn't tell you that, so I'm just going to wait it out a few days and see what happens. And, well, nothing ever happened. I was asymptomatic the entire time.
Wow.
And, you know, I lost my sense of smell, but I didn't really notice it because, like I said, terrible seasonal allergies. I rarely have a sense of smell anyway, so.
And for you, that was when we were back on campus, already doing our shows. I want to touch back on what this was like for us as journalists. I know we were all deeply affected as people.
Oh, yeah.
As a journalist, I know we already touched on the summer, but I remember our Zoom meetings. You know, late July, early August. Not only what are we going to cover, but how. We didn't know if we were coming back with our remote newscasts. We really wanted to get people in here, get their hands on equipment, but is it safe? That's a conversation we had weekly, trying to figure out, you know, are we going to send anyone off campus? That was a big one. Are we going to let people go out into the community, students, and just go run around, talk to everyone, get on camera interviews? Is everything going to be via Zoom? I think our first big event was when you and I traveled up to Fort Wayne, and we covered Mike Pence.
Oh, yeah.
And that one was a little shocking to me. I believe that was November or late October.
November-ish.
And that's the biggest crowd I had been around in months.
Well, and I think part of it also, and when I say this, I don't want it to sound like I'm endorsing a candidate or anything like that, but the people that were there, some of them took masking up. They took it very seriously, and there were reminders there reminding people, hey, you need to mask up, you need to wear a mask. But there were some people who were walking around, you know, and you would have thought it was 2019 by looking at them. But I think the one thing that was kind of important in all of this, you know, you got to make a personal decision for yourself. I remember we both kept our masks on. We made sure to stay away from people who were not necessarily exercising social distancing. But I know when the vice president got there, you know, he even said, hey, please make sure that we all keep our masks on. And there was a sense of responsibility, but I think it's kind of two different worlds. I felt like we were somewhere else because here at Ball State, and they've done their best to keep students safe. I know we've talked with President Mearns, but here we were, you know, having to mask up in the newsroom. When we're back there, we have our masks on. And I know we've had more hoops and hurdles to jump through, but it's all an effort to keep people safe. And I think, you know, as a group, we've done a good job of that, and kudos to, our team here in the newsroom.
And I don't mean to pick on that event in particular, because every time I've gone anywhere to cover anything, I've had interviewees, every time I sit down, they say, oh, you want the mask on or mask off? And I leave it up to them. I'm going to social distance.
Yeah.
That's to your discretion, whatever makes you and I both feel safe, what's safe for everyone. But that's a question that's asked every time I interview someone.
Yeah. Finally, I know we've got a little bit of time left here. Let's talk about the future. 30 seconds each person. Let's just talk about what do you expect to see, Blake? We can start with you.
Well, I certainly am very hopeful for the future. I want to get back to normal because, like I said, when I had COVID, the hardest part was just the psychological aspect of a social person like me feeling trapped. And so to help everybody and help the mental health aspect of everything, I just hope that we can get back to normal soon, and I would like to remain positive going forward.
Yeah, Brett?
I mean, all the uncertainty can only be so sure. And the one thing that I know that I'm sure about is just keeping myself safe and the people around me, and that's what I would like to do best for the common good of everybody. So, I mean, just going forward, and positivity and hopefulness will probably be the best for me.
I am very proud of how we have come, how far journalists and everyone has gone through this pandemic together. My heart is out for those who have all suffered throughout this pandemic. I am also, Brett, hopeful. I've got some family members that have been vaccinated, some people who are really, really important to me, and I hope to continue seeing everyone get vaccinated so that we can keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I know personally, for myself, Blake and Brittany, there's going to be some changes because we're all graduating. So I'm excited for the in-person graduation. But as you guys said, positivity, the good news is that people are getting vaccinated. I know your mom, she got vaccinated. My stepmom was able to get the vaccine. So it's very nice to see that people are kind of taking that next step. Hopefully we can kind of get back to normal. But it's been interesting to see this all play out, and hopefully things can get on the right track. And again, thank you guys. I wish I could give everybody a hug, but I know we can't right now.
Yeah.
Better days are ahead for sure.
Absolutely. And once again, guys, thank you so much. That's going to do it for us for this NewsLink Indiana special. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, hey, I'll see you in just a few hours bright and early tomorrow morning on Waking Up with Cardinal Weather at 8 o'clock. Have a good night and stay safe.